Now we're seeing something a little different going on, and that's the fact that some of our First Nations are saying, no, Bill 96 will not fly here. And I think it's fair to say, being pretty direct in their objection to this bill.
And rightly so.
Let's try to find out more. Grand Chief of the Mohawk Council of Kahnawáke is on the line. This is Kahsennenhawe, Sky Deer. First of all, thanks for being here this afternoon. Can you fill in some blanks for us here? Is this a definite, if this is how the bill is now and it does not change, we will not follow the law that will then become Bill 96, or the Bill 96 will become?
Yeah, what we said is that it's not going to apply on our territory, but what becomes more challenging is obviously we do business, we go to educational institutions and do many things off of the territory, right? So obviously it's going to have impacts on our lives in different ways. And we felt that it was important to ask for some time to hear us and where we have concerns about this bill. And unfortunately, it seems that it's falling on deaf ears for our petition to either get some delays or some even exemption from the bill, because there's other First Nations that have exemptions based on their agreements and their modern-day treaties, if I could call it that. So, why, if it's good for other nations, why wouldn't we be able to be given the same kind of opportunity?
Grand Chief, have you had any response from the CAQ or specifically Premier François Legault?
At this point, no. And what it sounds like to me is that if Bill 96 is going to proceed as is, the only concession or, I guess, resolution that they're looking toward is passing some kind of alternative legislation that protects indigenous languages and cultures. But what I expressed to the government is I don't think that's your role to protect our language and culture. That's ours. What we need right now is respect and recognition. And, they keep touting about reconciliation and wanting to have a better relationship forward, but then, passing legislation like this that already forces us to, learn another foreign language. For us as an English-speaking community, that's just what we've become accustomed to, and it's gotten us by. Yes, we take French courses as elective, or, we don't mind being able to communicate and having it as a tool, but when it's forced on you, that's where we have some serious problems.
I'm trying to understand. So you mentioned some other First Nations, so in James Bay in northern Quebec, have exemptions to this. Was there no explanation for why you can't have, or is the door still open to be able to talk about this?
Well, that's what we're hoping, that the door would be open and that we could have dialogue, but we haven't even been given that to this point. And, Ghislain Picard is the regional chief of the AFNQL, has been trying to propose even from the initial consultations, because they didn't consult with a lot of First Nations. The only entity was AFNQL and then Kahnawáke as a community. They didn't come to the Mohawks of Kahnawáke. They didn't go to the Mi'kmaq and Listuguj or other communities and nations, so it was very limited in terms of the engagement. So that's what we're hoping for right now, and I can't understand why they're trying to fast-track this. They have until June 10th, so I feel like it would be a good gesture for them to at least show a willingness to have a dialogue. But if it just passes this week without giving us that opportunity, I don't think it's going to go over very well.
I was thinking about how this government isn't exactly well known for consulting with the people directly impacted by their decisions. They do tend to just, that's the whole notwithstanding clause, right? They just try to plow through. I'm imagining them, and you tell me what you think, Grand Chief, but I'm imagining them I'm trying to find a nice way, but being incredibly perturbed right now and not knowing what to do, because if they grant an exemption, it potentially opens a big can of worms, because then all other minority groups can step forward looking for exceptions. So I'm imagining them kind of meeting behind closed doors now going, oh God, what the heck do we do now? What do you think is happening?
Well, with all due respect to other minorities, First Nations are in a whole different boat.
Agreed.
We've been here. This is our original territory. This is our ancestral lands. Show us where we've given it up. French comes from France. It's a foreign language on these lands that now they're making it kind of forced upon us to have to learn. And I was laughing because I'm driving back with my dad, who was also at the press conference today, saying, "Well, how come they don't learn Mohawk then?" So, I think it's a two-row street in terms of the relationship that we're trying to build. And, we just feel like right now where we're at in this time in history, we got to have better relations. And there's so many things that we could work toward. We were just listening to the commercials about climate change and how we got to do things different. We have a lot of indigenous knowledge about the earth and the interconnectedness of things. And it's like, if we're constantly dismissed culturally about our language, about our identities, and let's not talk about the racism that exists and that seems to be just ignored, Vienne Commission report, all the things that, this government seems to have agreed that they would address UNDRIP, now it just seems like it's all out the window. So I'm really hopeful. I'm trying not to, be so pessimistic that they don't want to open this door to at least have dialogue, but that's the kind of indications that I'm getting, from government officials.
When you said before that if you're not going to adopt, you're not going to basically adhere to this, follow this, if it does become law on your own territory, that's understandable. Then people say, well, wait a sec, what happens if you want to send your kids to an English CEGEP, right? And those rules are about to change. What do you do at that point? What options do you have?
And I think that's where our community is going to have to strategize. I mean, when they first passed Bill 101, and they were at that time going to impose, French language on our students, we did a major walkout out of Billings, and that's how we ended up starting the Kahnawáke Survival School, which is our own high school in the community. So now looking at maybe we're going to have to start our own indigenous colleges and our own technical institutes for us, by us. And, then we're going to need to have resources for that. So maybe we'll start tolling Quebecers coming across our territory. Who knows? But all I'm saying is this government has to think differently and speak differently and engaging with First Nations, because we're educated now and we can see what's coming.
I mean, on the one hand, I think it would be a beautiful thing for you to get some funding and to be able to have your own institutions. But I can only imagine how frustrating it must be to find yourself in this situation and to not be heard.
Excellent. That's exactly how we're feeling. It's like, banging our head against the wall. And that's why I said it feels like a divide and conquer strategy, right? Well, we'll give some nations exemptions because they've signed agreements with us, and, we'll ignore others. We won't give them a voice at the table. We're kind of dismissing Ghislain Picard and the AFNQL. It can't operate like that, So let's find a way to have positive relations together. I think when originally we made treaties with, the people who came to these lands, that we were always going to operate from a space of, peaceful coexistence. And I'm hoping that that's what we can find a way to do moving forward. But, when legislation gets passed and proposed like this, that doesn't consider, our culture, our language, which, again, we're in this phase of trying to revitalize after everything we've been through. It's only really come to surface in the last 2 years about the Indian residential schools and the Indian day schools and being forced to learn English. Mm-hmm. Now we feel like it's another colonial imposition now forcing us to learn French.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, look, I think we're all, as we listen to this, we talk about Anglos being in a situation like this, and obviously your situation is very much different. But again, it's about a government simply apparently putting its fingers in its ears. Let's hope that begins to change. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Much appreciated.
And thank you, guys. I really appreciate the time to share our experience.
Okay.
Thanks.
Best of luck.